Okay. Yay. All right, we'll get started. And Catherine Kelly, who's here from our office, she'll bring people in as they come in. Thankfully, we're all virtual, so when people come in, they're not going to make noise, so it'll be fine. My name's Allison Druin. I'm Associate Provost for Research and Strategic Partnerships, and I'm so excited to welcome you to our last talk in the fall semester for the Pratt Research Talks. And Amanda is going to be introduced properly by my colleague Rebecca Pels-Friedman in a moment. But I do want to say that this research program, this research talk program, is only one of many things we do in our Office of Research and Partnerships. Again, at any moment, at any time that you all have research that you're excited about or partnerships you want to build, please reach out to our office, and we absolutely are there to help you, bridge you with people, support you in writing your proposals, support you once you've gotten those wonderful research grants and so on, and really just grow people as faculty, as researchers, as wonderful people. Yes, exactly. And thank you, Rebecca, for putting where you should email us when you want to reach us in the chat. As I said in the chat, if as you're listening to this amazing talk, if you have any questions, comments, please put them in the chat, and we will be we'll be returning to those for discussion and for exploration after Amanda talks. Okay, we've got more people coming in. This is great. If you can put on your, if you have a fast enough internet and you can put on your screen, that's great. If you feel like you really have this dog sitting on your lap and you don't want anyone to see, that's fine. Keep yourself, whatever, covered. All right. With that, I think we are now on Broadway time, so I'm going to pass it to my colleague from the School of Design, Rebecca Pels-Friedman, who's been a longtime research leader at Pratt. She is now our partner in helping create these Pratt Research Talks, and she is going to introduce Amanda properly. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. First of all, thanks for joining us today. I'm really excited to introduce Amanda. I know most of you, so you all know that I'm passionate about design research. And that's really exciting to be able to introduce Amanda Huynh, who is on the faculty in the Industrial Design Department, where I also am on the faculty. She's our newest full-time professor. And in the short time, the last 2 years that she's been on the faculty, she's quickly become like a really integral part of the department. So Amanda comes to Pratt from Emily Carr University, where she was on the faculty after finishing her undergraduate degree in industrial design there. She worked for 7 years in the industry as an industrial designer, and then she went to Milan to study food design. I can't think of anything more exciting than to be in Italy to study food design at the Scuola Tecnica di Design. I hope I said that with my bad Italian well enough. Anyway, Amanda's research areas involve the design of food, the experience of eating, and social practices in the kitchen. Her favorite food is noodle soup, which I really love. And today she's going to speak to us on participatory research and eating together again. Please welcome Amanda to our Brown Bag series.
Thank you, Allison. Thank you, Rebecca, so much. I'm just going to do the thing where I narrate that I'm going to share my screen. Oh, I need screen sharing access, please. If a co-host can enable.
Bye now.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, so I think you can see my little title page here with a little drawing of a kitchen. As Rebecca mentioned, my name is Amanda Huynh. I use she, her pronouns, and I teach in Industrial Design Sophomore Studio, Junior Studio, Capstone Studio, and in the spring in the graduate program. So like Rebecca mentioned, I joined Pratt at the beginning of last academic year. I've been very, very happy to be so supported in my research already. Previously at Emily Carr University, I taught industrial design, interaction design, critical studies, and foundation. And yeah, food design is what I mainly do in my practice. I think about community building, race equity, and equity in participatory research. So hello, I'm going to first acknowledge that I'm located here on Lenape-Hoking, the traditional unceded territory of the Lenape people, past, present, and future. I do this as a settler here in Brooklyn, a participant in the ongoing colonial project of the United States of America. Through my work as a designer and a professor, I seek to challenge colonial structures, express gratitude to the stewards of the land and water who came before, and honor the indigenous people who are here today. So, because I know that this is on the minds of everybody who is probably here who doesn't know me, what is food design is a question that I get very often, and I love being able to answer it because it is such a new discipline that it is continually being defined, and I'm happy to be one of the people that can hopefully take part in defining it. But to me, because I'm trained as an industrial designer and I really see food as a material, it does live under the umbrella of industrial design, but it can be anything from the design of the food itself. Like Pringles is an example I use a lot. That is the work of probably many industrial designers to think about the texture and the shape and the packaging. So the food itself, the packaging of the food, the spaces of food, so bar and restaurant design, tabletop design, furniture design for food, and experiences of food. So what I'm doing today is giving a brief overview of two projects that I'm working on, which I think share many connections beyond just the fact that I work on both of them. So after returning to Canada from Italy, from studying in Italy, the things that I really missed about what I was doing or how I saw industrial design was really thinking about social change and what it means to address inequities that are embedded in some of our institutions and recognizing a need for a new perspective to design. So I really see designers as people who bridge disciplinary gaps. We are the people that pull all these threads together and give it new meaning and really put it into a framework. So bridging disciplinary gaps and translating these wicked problems that we encounter into action research frameworks. So how do we take these problems that are so big, so overwhelming, and break it down into pieces that we can address through action research and through the skills that we have. And if we don't have them, how do we connect to the people that do have those? This is I mean, you can see me here cooking dumplings at Emily Carr University. So this kitchen that I'm cooking on was designed by a former student of mine, Joey Chung, who took my junior food design class and went on to create and design a mobile kitchen for the campus in response to the new university campus that we moved onto in her senior year that had very little access to affordable food options as we did before at our former campus. So it was her way of kind of giving back to the community. And she did donate this kitchen that she built to the school and the Students' Union there so that it can be used by everyone to hold everything from little studio lunches to big workshops like this one that I held about dumpling making. And this was for the multilingual Emily Carr project, where we really wanted to address inequities in language access in our teaching and learning. So you can see that when I'm thinking about food, it's really about using food as a way to broach more difficult subjects like language access. But if we can talk about food first, we can really talk about anything beyond that. So Social Practice Kitchen is what this kitchen is called. Well, not this kitchen, but Social Practice Kitchen is the project that I've been working on. I was awarded a research seed grant last year from Pratt, which was very exciting, to be able to adapt Joey's design for the School of Design here at Pratt, I mean, down the street from me, with Kai Chuang, who was my research assistant. This was Joey's original design. MOKI, short for Mobile Kitchen. And here it is in use a couple of other times when I was cooking congee for a class on the left here. And I think this is another image from the dumpling making. But this kitchen has continued to grow and adapt to the space of Emily Carr University with a larger and larger collection of condiments in the bottom of the cart there, and different tools that are donated and kind of appear over time. So it's been really interesting to think about the ways that it's already been adapted in the few short years that it's been at Emily Carr, but thinking about also what the needs are of the School of Design at Pratt.
Hello, Yolanda.
So this was an original rendering. By the time that the research open house rolled around last year, the school was already closed. We were already in pandemic mode, so I could not access the shop to start building, but with the support of the grant, was able to work with Kai, my research assistant, and also have all the materials purchased and just ready and waiting in my office to come together. So we've adapted it in different ways, taking all the measurements of every possible door in the School of Design that it could have to roll through. Also adapting the backboard to a pegboard. And because of the pandemic, couldn't work in the shop until recently. So this was finished this fall semester over several weekends. Here it is in the courtyard at the School of Design. And here it is in next to my office mate's desk. I hope he doesn't mind for now. But the capabilities are we have a two burner stovetop. We've got an air fryer oven and lots of other tools that have been donated over the summer when people found out that this project was happening. So this kitchen is now available to all School of Design community, including faculty, staff, administrators, and students, to be able to book for whatever they would like, and just continuing this research into how can we build community through food, how do we experiment with food in all these different ways. Here it is being carted around in a mostly empty campus. I think this was evening time. So this image is actually from my capstone class, or the undergraduate thesis class in industrial design last year. The theme of my class is nourishment and social change. And at a certain point in time, we decided, actually inspired by the Black Panthers breakfast program, that we would come early. If you can imagine these senior students coming early every single Monday and taking turns cooking breakfast for one another, so that we can have a check-in the same way that we might in a professional setting, a check-in to say, what are we working on? What are our plans this week? And whether or not we have any blockers and how we can support each other to move forward. Yeah, it's just bizarre to look at these images of students so close together and without wearing face coverings at this point. But this was how I was teaching and how a classroom was convened. And so already this was an opportunity for the kitchen to be used in a really, I mean, the kitchen didn't exist at this point, but there is kind of the guts are there. The cookware and just like the one cooktop and whatever kettle somebody donated to the studio. So going from this to the Zoom classroom, I was really interested in trying to find ways to bring the same sort of connectivity in the students and community building that we know as professors really support the way that they learn together and make together and just bounce ideas off of and grow. This is a screenshot from the very first day of my sophomore class. So these students do not know each other. They're new to the industrial design program, and in the night before, or maybe 2 nights before our first day, I sent them all different images of molecules and then had them just bring marshmallows and toothpicks or whatever equivalent food or gummies or grapes that they had to be able to assemble them. So one person was just describing what they had in front of them, and then another person was building it on the other side. So this is just kind of a way to start them off thinking about closing this gap between them. These students cover countless time zones. I think we're 15 hours is maybe the largest time difference we have. And making them feel close in a way that they can be able to lean on each other throughout the entire semester. Big credit to my technical partner and sophomore industrial design studio, Jessica Osserman, who happens to run the Form and Tech Lab in the School of Design. She accepts files from the students and has been working with them to connect them with the materials and with the resources that we have on campus, including the laser cutter. And then she laser cuts what they've done and puts them together and photographs it for them. This is simple joinery that they're learning, but they ended up creating more complicated furniture pieces that they drew in 2D, sent the file to the school. Jessica laser cut them and then assemble them and photograph them for them. So I can, and Jessica can, actually pick up what they've done and evaluate it in 3 dimensions, which is something that is so valuable to what we try and teach in industrial design. So all that is really to say is to try and introduce this idea of remote co-design and how it is so important that we actually are able to experience things in person as much as we can, and how we can really communicate across distances, something that is 3-dimensional when we can only see each other on these two-dimensional grids. So on the co-design project, co-design team, or remote online physical co-design tools, it's Dr. Allison Druin and myself representing Pratt Institute, Dr. Daniel Lethinger from University of Colorado Boulder, and Dr. Jason Yip from the University of Washington. It's been super fun to get to know these folks and continuing to work with them. We meet every Friday afternoon, and it is just a lovely time to keep progressing our project, but also a time to reflect with other professors in different fields about how they're teaching and how it's going in this Zoom world. So when I talk about co-creation, or when we talk about co-design and participatory design, it's the act of creating with stakeholders, specifically within the design development process, to ensure the results meet their needs and are usable by them. So we're designing with them versus designing for them. When I teach research, sometimes we think about research as seeking expertise, and that's true, but it doesn't always mean that it's people with letters behind their names or people who wear white lab coats. I don't know, like what we picture, but when I teach research, I think about, or I have students think about experts and who they are, because an expert is just a person who has a comprehensive and authoritative knowledge of a skill in a particular area. And this is like from a slide that I teach in research where it's like highly highlighted, and I star next to it, that we should trust and empower research participants as experts in their own lived experience. So we're examining our positionality. Where am I? What relationship do I have to power and to privilege? And what comes with me when I walk into a room to conduct research? These are some of the projects from a design research class that I used to teach at Emily Carr, where I really want to build up the toolkits that the students have for design and building up their capacity and thinking about qualitative design, creating space for multiple solutions, and people being active subjects in research rather than consumers as a passive recipient of just what we make. So I try and prepare them to have a pretty wide range of toolkits so that they can kind of adapt it to what they need in their research. So Joash, Grace, Ricardo, and Kira were looking at this idea of where our water comes from in Vancouver, Fraser Valley. So they created this beautiful cultural probe kit for people to write their reflections on water, collect tap water from different taps, and really map out what is expected. This is a flush counter for their toilets at home to try and get all these different metrics and see how people interact with water in ways that may, over a period of time, in this case a week, but sometimes even longer, to gather information that we might not get from a survey or a simple interview. This is another one by Marcos, Giancarlos, Benjamin, Cora, and Catherine, and they were investigating the ways that people take health and food advice. So they had a booklet of placemats that people could eat on throughout the week, a disposable camera, and little activities and questionnaires that they opened day over day to answer. It was really nice to see the placemats come back because people had scribbled on them, and you could also see coffee rings and different trips of food, and that also gave them information and insight into their research. Okay, this is, I think, photo credit to Allison. But kids team, the very first kids team was convened at the University of Maryland by Dr. Allison Druin to co-design technologies that support children's learning and play. So the kids that participate in kids team are age 7 to 11. And this idea of cooperative inquiry and exploring together, emphasizing low fidelity prototyping and intergenerational work where all the stakeholders are valued. You can see here, as it continues to be today, the ratio of adults to kids is very high. So kids feel like their input is valued, and they feel this freedom to explore and learn together. So what's been exciting to me about this project is really taking this idea of co-design when we can all be in the same room and being forced on. So kids teams are now online on Zoom. So how do we support kind of this meta idea? How do we co-design together from afar, ways to co-design from afar? With Daniel and Allison and Jason, we are looking to leverage existing technology. This is a VR simulation image by Lenovo. And this is, I don't know why, AR is used a lot for car advertisements. If for some reason you would like to bring a 3D car onto your kitchen counter. But this is using this idea of virtual reality, augmented reality, and mixed reality with our own physical spaces to understand more of how we can leverage existing technology towards embodied learning and embodied cognition. So we know that collective learning is where this deep embodied learning occurs, and it's through collaboration and problem solving together that we can achieve breakthroughs in understanding. So this spacecraft, I know it doesn't look like much, but it is one of several that were put together by the kids and kids team at University of Washington. So I want to emphasize how exciting this image is to me, because these kids were able to create this simply by taking some time running around their houses to pick up items 3D real items that they can then bring back to the screen. Adults took screenshots of them. Like they would just hold them up and say, okay, like this, like tilting a little bit, bringing it closer, taking screenshots, and then using Google Slides together to be able to assemble a spacecraft, which was their simple prompt of, can you build a spacecraft together? These teams of 4 or 5 kids. I was there for this session, and I joined them again weeks later when all of these kids could still very much recall what their contributions were. That's my Pringles tin. That's my, that's my actual spacecraft that I have built out of Lego. They could contribute. They could recall what they contributed to the research or to the spacecraft, but also recall what their shared world and story was that they created. So we can only hope that what we teach is so immediately impactful and engaging and memorable for the kids and our students beyond. I'm just showing some of the diagrams of how Daniel, Jason, Allison, and I are thinking about this. Is like there are co-designers, what exists in whose physical space, how do we bring it into a shared digital space, and then how that single digital space is engaging, or how do we interact as different co-designers with it. We're just trying to map this out. This is all very new territory. So making circular diagrams, making linear diagrams, thinking about this shared communication and different ways that we assign meaning, but also assign the ways that we interact in physical space, then a hybrid space, and then a purely digital space. But all of it is to try and make a playful space and bringing it back to what co-design is all about, especially with Kids Team, where it is this improvisational play. There's lots of low fidelity making really quickly so that we can get ideas out really quickly, and really just all of that bringing together towards deeper learning and deeper insights for this, like, again, meta research. Okay, yes. So the 12-foot skeleton has made an appearance in most of my presentations recently, but I just know that there is something there, and it continues to be something I think about because we have the power to kind of make these things real. For those of you who are not familiar, Home Depot offers on their mobile site a view in 3D augmented reality option. So this 12-foot skeleton, giant size skeleton with life eyes, that was really popular around Halloween. I think people are now putting it in like Santa costumes to make more use of this $300 skeleton, can suddenly be brought into all of our spaces. So my friend Juliana Dodo in London were the ones that said, look at this 12-foot skeleton. So here it is in my room right behind me. And then it appears in Vancouver on the beach, in Brooklyn, in this loft space, and like Vancouver Island. So it's really interesting to see like how delightful this was already. So this technology that we're leveraging of AR and VR, it's exciting to think about how it is really just magic. And the shared experiences are what we're really craving right now. So this is delightful to have. And Google also just integrated augmented reality with their search. So beyond animals, which you can see tigers and dogs and giant pandas and horses suddenly appearing in all of my friends' living rooms and their workspaces. This is Neil Armstrong standing right behind me. So beyond animals, also concepts. So we can see that there's already educational value in being able to mix our reality with these projections just through our devices, and it changes so much. And there's just limitless opportunities, I think, to education. So during pandemic, when our learning experiences are directly impacted by the strength of our internet connection and the equipment that we can afford, it really illuminates the deep divides that exist. So again, what's been exciting to me about this project is the potential for access in combining low fidelity prototyping and accessible materials with leading edge technology that really just equates a lot of the times to magic. The applications are limitless. We work with kids right now, but I've also tried building forts with my sophomore design students. Daniel tried building forts with his computer science students. And I think the need for embodied learning is not limited by age or discipline. So these are just some screenshots of international cooking class where friends from grad school and I have been taking turns leading cooking classes, from Julia in Medellin. I'm in Brooklyn. Other Julia is in London. Marco's in Milan still, and Slow, who's barely in this picture, is in Taipei. How do we feel the warmth of breaking bread and cooking and sharing food together when a pandemic and thousands of miles and time zones separate us? So I think we can do better in dreaming up ways to dream and create meaning together. That's a really brief whirlwind walkthrough of the things that I'm working on, but thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for being here during what I know is one of the most hectic times of the year.
All right, I'm going to unmute myself. All right, and thank you so much, Amanda. That was quite a whirlwind tour of so many things, and you are. I'm exhausted by thinking about all the things that you've been doing. So, again, if anybody has questions, please put them in the chat. I'll start with a few questions, and if anybody has other questions, please jump in, and we'll have a good conversation. Okay. So Amanda, since I know a lot less about your social practice kitchen than I do about the other remote co-design work that you're doing, I actually put in a question about your kitchen work. And what I'm really trying to understand is, how do you, when you design for food for kitchen, okay, how do you bring people's voice into your designs when it comes to what you end up creating in terms of your food environments? Is the best way interviews? Is the best way looking at their menu, the placemats and the mess? Is it observing people? What are the specific sort of ways that you go about understanding what needs to get created for kitchens?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is observation, but a lot of it also is just doing the thing that we're trying to do, which is eat together. My first assignment in the food design class, which I've now taught the 4th iteration of, is creating a meal together. So usually when we're in person, I gift them something. So I gift them an ingredient that is local and seasonal. 2 years ago, it was watermelons. I gave each and every student a watermelon from a local farmer, and had them think of a way to cook together. So it's a collaborative cooking assignment, and then documenting that from an anthropological point of view. So who are the users? What are the tools that they're using? What's the environment? What's required for them to kind of cook together? So you can kind of see in this, when they do this, that there's a lot of cultures that come together, and the ways that they kind of try and negotiate that is all recorded by them, because they're practicing these modes of observation just on themselves, and then just learning how to evaluate situations given just the framework that I give them. But of course, they can expand on that.
Okay, wonderful. Rebecca, because I know that your time is short, is there a question you have?
Well, first of all, I don't really have a specific question, but can I tell you, this was so inspirational. I especially love how, like, I don't really know exactly how the AR, VR component fits in, but I like that you're playing with it. And I thought that was really fun to show how other people are playing with it. And I think that's like sort of like your first step in figuring out like how to work with it is how to play with it. And so I personally found it really inspirational and really fun just to listen to you and to understand the work that you do. It's so different than the work that I do. It's amazing that we're both in the same department.
I think they need both of us.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. Hey, Amanda, do you think you could tell people what the differences were or the similarities were between when you did co-design with your students versus Daniel's students? You know, your students being design students and his students being engineering students. It'd be interesting to give a sense of the differences in terms of what you found.
Yeah, so after the spacecraft, we actually were trying to think of ways to get the kids and kids team to move to even bigger objects. How can we bring them to bring bigger objects into the frame, or can we have them take their devices and take pictures of things outside of their, like inside or outside of their home? Really trying to get them to move around and consider anything in their immediate vicinity part of what they can design. So because of one of the narratives that came up with the spacecraft, I should have shown that screenshot, but there was spacecrafts, and then they're like, okay, and we've crash landed, and now we need to build up this whole thing. So there were stories that came way beyond the prompt that we gave them. Of course, this is what we want in co-design, is for people to just take ideas and run with them. So we framed a second session around building forts, because we all have this familiarity of pulling our dining chairs together and putting sheets over them and flashlights, whatever else, to design a fort together. So we did that with kids team. And then I did that with my sophomore students who, you know, like they recorded their sessions for me so I could, and I wasn't there. I mean, I was like in the main Zoom room, and they were all in their breakouts trying to build and come up with a plan on how best to build their forts. So a lot of them split their time and said, okay, let's take 5 minutes, go take pictures of all the things that we think can go in a fort, and then we'll come back together and kind of cut and paste them together. So they were, I think, mostly planners and were trying to solve problems the way that designers do. They're like, what is the problem? How do we address this? And is Amanda serious? Was another question. But I think for Daniel's students, who are computer science students, less hands-on in a way that they wanted to instead search up some of these pictures. So they would Google search things like blankets and chairs and mattresses, and then bring them into their Google slides. So from that, we really wanted to think about this idea of creating a repository of images or concepts of ideas, similar to how Google has integrated AR into their search, so that there's freedom for the co-designers to either search up what they need, kind of like a GIF keyboard almost, or take pictures of what they want to put in from their homes. So I think there's a lot of trying to create more and more tools for them to be able to just have this seamless interaction, the seamless co-design that we can really have in physical space.
Wonderful. Any others with other questions? Any others? Okay. Oh, there. Oh, yes, Anita.
Hi, thank you, Amanda, for sharing. Thank you for Rebecca for introducing and starting this. And thank you, Allison and team, for making all this great supportive research happen in the Institute. It's changed the way we're able to get to do things and work with each other in ways that are so important. I think I'm feeling nostalgic because it's December. We're almost at the end of the semester. It's holidays. So anyway, Amanda, thinking towards the future, I wanted to ask you, you sort of said we can book this. How can we book this? And I'm wondering if you could talk to us all about possible ways you imagine the cart being used. I've always, just to sort of speak to my own interest in food and design, thought of food can be, as you've talked about it so clearly, food can be the subject of design, but it's also a medium or a shared activity through which we can understand each other and get to issues of design. And as you have said to me so very clearly on a number of occasions, that design you think of as a form of communication, which I love as a way to understand how we think about how design can change our world, that it's in physical and direct ways, but it's also in the immaterial and in the ways that we exchange with each other as well. So the simple question is, from all my speechifying sitting here in my Zoom world, is what would you paint some scenarios of what you'd like to see happen in the spring with the CART and activity around campus, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hopeful for the spring because I am teaching fully hybrid. All three of my courses will be hybrid and studio, and I know that students are becoming more comfortable or at least knowledgeable about what I do and the opportunities that maybe presents for them as students. So hopefully I can convince this next crew of students to be like, creating the breakfast club again, because I think that was such a space that is really a dream land for a professor, because they gel so quickly once they eat together, that they become so comfortable in sharing their ideas, like, outside of food. So I think selfishly, that is one thing that I would like, is to have breakfast cooked for me on that kitchen. But I also love being able to share food with students at different milestones. So if we have a critique, it's just a nice way to kind of end that off. I know that there are some ComD professors who are interested in food as well, whether it's like graphic applications to food, if they want to mold chocolate or mold candy. I've also taught, I've run candy molding workshops to just think about these kind of low stakes way of designing for mold making. So that's also something that can be supported by the kitchen. And I think just small little gatherings, like if you want to have a meeting and you want to cook together, that's something that is now possible.
Okay, I've got ideas. That's great. I'm also thinking about how the courtyard was used as a possible teaching space this fall, but also as a place of gathering for people. And how for when it was particularly warm, start every morning when I arrived at school early, opening up the courtyard doors, making sure the furniture was in its specified configuration, and then hoping people would use that space during the course of the day. So I can see it be, your food cart being part of a somewhat interactive way to engage community as we go through hybrid reality part 2 in spring. So it's very great.
I think like I'm excited for the interdisciplinary potential as well. Even if, I don't know, maybe like on Mondays I cook a vegan lunch and people can come so they can meet one another. It's a weird world for sure with face coverings and like social distancing, but I think there can still be so much of this meeting one another and chatting.
Great.
Good points. Really good points. Any other questions? Yeah, Nancy.
Yeah, hi, thank you, Amanda. That was so interesting. I'm an assistant professor in the School of Information, and I actually do a lot of work with technology and the environment, and food sort of plays a role in that as well. So it's something I've been thinking about kind of from a tech perspective. And in the UX world, we also think a lot about experience, and food often kind of informs that because food is such an experiential thing. So when we're thinking about sort of how to design experiences, we often kind of think about food too. And I love how you are kind of bringing it into the classroom, because to me, it's also something that really cuts across cultures. So food is this thing that brings people together pretty much wherever you live. And so kind of getting to have that experience with different foods, I think is really great. And one of my questions was actually kind of related to a little bit, you've touched upon a little bit of the idea of kind of materiality or the material of food. And I'm really curious if you've done any work or if you've been thinking about anything in relation to kind of using food as a design material or doing material studies where you kind of explore different foods. It's something I've been thinking about with my students a lot. And this spring I'm teaching a sustainable design class, and we're kind of doing some material studies with like plants and dirt and all these kinds of things. But I'm sort of been thinking about using food maybe as a way to tap into that, to think about like living materials and like bio design and that kind of thing. And I know there's kind of all this weird stuff happening with like 3D printing with food materials and stuff. So I'm kind of curious if you have been thinking about kind of that intersection between tech from kind of that angle and materials.
Yeah, for sure. I see that there's a lot of connection in the way that, same way that I said that if I talk about food with anybody first, then I can talk about any number of difficult subjects after that. I think that there's so much opportunity in food because it's kind of this lower stakes material that everybody engages with, 3 times or more a day. So it's something that is really approachable. If we can start talking about mold making, injection molding, 3D printing, cutting sheet material, we can do all of that with food. And it does it in a way that's kind of playful and lighthearted, but still all of this learning around the materiality and the limitations of material can still be built into that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Super. Any other questions? Okay, I have one more. Of course, I know you're shocked. And this is an insider question because I know what you're doing. So I know that you and Daniel and Jason and I are working on a grant proposal for NSF. And I realized that it's a pretty neat experience because I'm watching you and Daniel, who have not had a lot of experience in writing grant proposals before, getting mentored, not just by myself, but by Jason Yip, who happens to like be a grant machine. Anyway, and so what I'm wondering about is just lifting the curtain a little bit and telling people about the process you're going through of actually explaining research for a proposal to get funded.
Yeah, I was just talking to Daniel the other day because Daniel and I also put our heads together different times during the week as well. But I was talking to him the other day about how last year I actually worked on an intellectual property lawsuit as an expert witness, and that was a different kind of writing that I had to learn as well. And he had the experience of, when you send patents in and you tell the lawyers what you're doing, and then you get back this information that you're like, is that what I said? But it's these different ways and different modes of language that we're really having to kind of sift all our thoughts into. So it's been awesome. I mean, working from afar with them, we use Miro, we use Google extensively to mark up documents, but I've really loved being able to I think we're like picking each other's brains all the time to get to something as like co-PIs on the project to really make sure that that both of us have what our interests are or what we're excited about represented in a way that also fits all of the categories that we need to hit. So we have to talk about intellectual merit, and we have to talk about potential impact, and we have to talk about related work. And to me, the related work is all industrial design work. And to Daniel, it's all technological work. So to be able to bring those two together, I think has been super exciting. And that's like my winter plan, is working on this after I submit my grades.
Yeah, your dean is on this thing, so make sure you know that. Oh my goodness. All right, wonderful. Any last questions? Otherwise, we'll finish. We'll finish early a little bit. Any last questions? All right. Well, look, join me in thanking Amanda. You can open up your microphones. Yay!
Thank you, everyone, for being here. Honestly, it's great.
Oh, thank you. All right, yay. All right, and we'll see you all in the spring at some point for our next round of talks. And if you're interested, let us know.
Thank you.
Thank you.
everyone.
Thanks, Alvin.
Thank you. Bye.